When initially beginning the audience feedback part of my coursework, I decided to devise a series of polls. These polls can be found on my blog. These polls were specified to particular aspects of my trailer and ancillary text. By creating polls, it allowed me to break down sections that needed to be answered. However, I found that polls weren't exactly the best way about accessing audience feedback, as I often found that only a small number of people would complete them or misinterpret the questions. This therefore meant that I would not gain a big enough response to determine what my target audience actually wanted. Nevertheless, as my target audience is in the age range 18 to 25, it meant that I fit the criteria, and because of this allowed me to determine and have an insight into what my target audience would want and need. However, it was not enough to just go on the basis of what I wanted, as this may not meet the needs of others. Because of this point, throughout the course I devised several different polls which allowed my target audience to express what they wanted, as well as indicate what they did and didn't like within my own work and real media products. For example, when producing my ancillary text, I provided my audience with polls whereby they had the opportunity to state what they did and didn't like about my work and other studied media products. Coinciding with this, during my research, it also allowed me to acknowledge the needs of my particular target audience, as the success of the media product provided me with an indication as to whether the audience liked it and whether or not it met their needs and wants. I tried to produce as many methods for accessing audience feedback because I had finished each of my products, so that if my target audience did not like something, I would have been able to make any alterations necessary. For example, during the construction stages of my poster, I devised polls where the audience could decide which font, colouring and style they preferred. Without actively asking for feedback throughout the course, through the use of my blog, I have had the availability of teachers and friends to comment on my work and discuss aspects they did and didn't like. By other students providing me with feedback was a great benefit to me, as due to them fitting my target audience range, it meant that their needs and wants were perfectly suited to the criteria of my products. The use of the comments section on my blog I found was much more beneficial and useful to me than the use of the polls, as it meant that the audience wasn't limited to a text box answer, as the comment box allowed for the availability of them to express their opinion and ideas and be much more elaborate about what they thought. I have learned through my audience feedback from various polls and video question and answer sessions that my trailer works sufficiently as a horror trailer, and that the genre portrayed was clearly identifiable. Many people felt that the idea of horror was supported through the music used, pacing and suspense that was created because of this. One element that I discovered from my audience feedback was the fact that my music really helped to emphasise the thrill factor of my trailer, and that this aspect of my trailer really supported and promoted the text and sequences revealed. A large percentage of my audience feedback felt that I received said that my trailer clearly identified who the source of error was within my trailer, and that a clear indication between my normal and abnormal characters was established. Due to this aspect, it allowed for a connection to be built towards my characters. However, a minority of responses felt that due to not seeing much of the other characters or having some sort of understanding and awareness of their purpose meant that they were unable to sympathise and really connect with what they were being shown. Through the use of my polls and video recordings, I was able to establish how some sequences within my trailer did not work so well as others, and because of this, the audience was unable to remain interested and excited throughout. This could support the reasoning behind the lack of emotional bond for my characters. However, many people felt that the pacing and climax towards the end helped to sustain their engagement and really emphasise and exaggerate what they were watching. Through my audience feedback, it also allowed me to acknowledge that a few of the people who had watched my trailer felt that due to Alice being so abruptly introduced, without having any sense of who she was, limited the amount of fear that they had experienced, as they felt that they were very lost when watching her and couldn't fully engage or understand her purpose within the trailer. Nevertheless, a large proportion of people felt that it was obvious as to who she was, and that I made it blatantly obvious that she was causing the fear to the other girls. In reference to mise-en-scène, a large percent of my audience feedback I received stated that it was obvious through the use of lighting and costume choices of my characters who the terrifying character was, and that the different outfits worn by the characters alongside the lighting that accompanied them helped to support the idea of their innocence and normality. Overall, I am relatively happy with the audience feedback that I received, as not only was it very useful during the construction stages of my work, but it also allowed for an overall opinions to be expressed after the work had been completed. The continual feedback during production allowed me to adapt and change my ideas in accordance to my target's audience wants, as well as have an insight to their thoughts once everything had been completed. One of my main responses and suggestions regarding my work that I obtained from my audience feedback was that they felt if more close-ups or different angles and techniques were to be used within the trailer, it would have helped to maximise their interest and engagement, as they found that due to many of my shots being mid-length, it meant that They knew what they were getting, and my trailer didn't really exaggerate or break away from its uniformed appearance. Therefore, this reduced the fear factor that could have otherwise been implied with varying and wacky techniques. It was evident through my audience feedback that my choice of music helped to support the film, and the pacing and climax implied through it added to the tension and mystery of not only my possessed character, but also the trailer as a whole.